Assassin's Creed Shadows is in such deep water that at this point it'll be a miracle if this game even releases. I also want to talk about Avowed and how that LSD mushroom nightmare of a game confirms that yet again players are in for some absolute slop. Also, I gotta share some news that I was given from one of my sources deep inside the video game industry. I say that like they're Snake himself stealthing through enemy lines, but whatever, it sounds cooler if I say it like that. So before I get into all the other news, I do want to tell you some things that I was told. Firstly, I was told that Ubisoft just had another all-hands-on-deck meeting discussing the future of Shadows and that this meeting had to do with the release date. As I'm told, Ubisoft is currently contemplating delaying Shadows yet again. I was told months ago that they would delay the game until March, which did ended up being true. This one I'm a little skeptical of since my source said they were told this by one person who was actually at this meeting, but we'll go with it for now. Basically, Assassin's Creed Shadows might get delayed yet again until the time frame of around June to maybe about August 2025. Now it isn't confirmed yet, but I asked my source why would Ubisoft want to do that after being so close to this new release date. Apparently it's cause there's still problems with the game that Ubisoft needs to fix, as I'll show in a bit within this video. But while they haven't committed obviously to this new delay, I don't really see it happening, but it's still in the cards for them, so to speak, for Ubisoft, so I figured I'd let you guys all know. What my source said is that they believe that Ubisoft will keep delaying the game until it enters what they perceive as a positive reception release-wise. They really want this game to work well, and they're willing to keep delaying it until they get it right, according to my source. I also got an interesting tip on Sony PlayStation as well. According to one of my sources, Sony Japan specifically, who if you don't know has a new CEO now, has apparently made a new mandate within PlayStation as a whole. This new mandate is that every first-party studio that Sony owns is allegedly going to make every studio run their scripts, their character designs, even the archetypes for these characters as in how they're written, what they represent, and so on, and even the actors that are working in these games to all be peer-reviewed in-house by Sony Japan specifically. I asked my source, and this is the same source that told me all the Shadows stuff months ago and the whole thing about games lying in their marketing material going forward and more, so I trust them on this. But they surmise that the reason why Sony Japan is doing this is to cut down on the woke nonsense that is being pushed in their games by their Californian side. If you didn't know, Sony has a big presence in California, and that office over there is responsible for a lot of the westernized slop that you've seen coming out in recent years. Well, I reported a long time back that Sony was in a quiet civil war amongst its members to pivot the company more so towards its Japanese-esque sensibilities and way of doing things. And this new CEO is a big green flag, so to speak, that Sony is indeed trying to fix these things behind the scenes. We also know that based on this one employee who used to work at Sony in San Francisco named Ryusuke, who said themselves publicly, and I'll read it, "Most of my team was just laid off from PlayStation. If you know anyone who needs an engineer, reach out." So it seems as though the Sony is, to some degree, trying to clean house, so to speak, of their westernized sensibilities that have been doing nothing lately but losing them money and costing them fan loyalty. Remember that slop like Concord and the overindulgent pushing of IPs like Horizon down everyone's throat with like the Lego game and all the other nonsense and all the remasters? That is all Western Sony stuff. So it's interesting to hear that Sony Japan specifically wants to filter these games and hopefully, according to my source, ensure that their future games are not dumpster fires in the making. I don't know if this will mean that they'll force Naughty Dog or something to make Intergalactic more interesting to look at from their shaved hair, obviously lesbian protagonist, but I guess we'll see. But that's what I heard from some sources, a potential Shadows delay, and Sony might be cleaning house quietly. Now let's get into this other news that is also Shadows related. Firstly, it's being reported by, and I can never say this website's name properly, Routers. I already know someone's going to correct me in the comments, let's just keep moving. Anyway, they reported that Ubisoft's financials have dropped an astounding 52% compared to last year in the same time period. Which is actually crazy, but not that surprising considering, well, it's Ubisoft, guys. However, according to Ubisoft themselves, Ubisoft said that pre-orders for Shadows are tracking solidly in line with those of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the second most successful entry of the franchise. So Ubisoft is trying to save face, I guess, and claim that Shadows, despite the backlash, is still being pre-ordered at a very good pace, but I guess we'll see. It is interesting that they confirmed that Odyssey is the second most successful game in the franchise, because Black Flag has sold the most and Valhalla was the most profitable. So I guess Odyssey was second most profitable in the series then. Either way, if Shadows is tracking in line with Odyssey, maybe this could be a win for Ubisoft, but 52% drop in revenue year over year, that is staggeringly bad no matter how you slice it. Then of course there was this from IGN, where Ubisoft pretty much tried to convince players that they can play Shadows and never really need to play Yasuke that much, which reads, Assassin's Creed Shadows players won't be missing out if they largely ignore one protagonist. The pipeline of propaganda from Ubisoft going from Yasuke is a core integral part of our game to actually you can just ignore him completely if you play the game is very telling. They know that they screwed it up big time, and I doubt if Ubisoft survives this release that in the future, whenever a new Assassin's Creed game is made or pitched, they will probably never do the whole dual protagonist idea ever again. And I think their biggest mistake here was separating the power fantasy into two different characters, especially considering that the last 4 games in the series just combined both power fantasies into one capable character. It was clearly just a gimmick that was being pushed by Ubisoft so they could shoehorn in Yasuke, that's all it is. I think if Shadows just had a male or female option for Naoe and no Yasuke, this game would have done just fine in sales and probably in reception too. Sure, yeah, it would still get cooked for messing up things in Japan's representation-wise, but at the very least, they wouldn't have this blight to deal with. IGN spoke to creative director Jonathan Dumont about Shadows. Here's what he said. I don't think you're missing out on things too much, Dumont said. I think it's more of your preference to say, okay, I'll see how the game will adapt a little bit to the character if you choose one over the other. They get individual introductions and then they get their own questline too. Let's say for Naoe, a personal questline cannot be played by Yasuke, and those are two distinct things, but the core of the game can be pick your character and the game adapts. We're not imposing players to try to split the time. If you prefer one character for any reason, you can play maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to put a percentage, but quite a bit of the game using one of them. But if you want to balance it out, I play quite a bit balanced out, and what happens is I play with one for 3, 4, 5 hours, and then I switch, and then I just play 2, 3 hours. Usually I play stealth, and then I say, alright, let me destroy some camps and stuff, alright for a while, and then I can just change like that. Yeah, this just kind of comes off as weird to me that you're pretty much just telling IGN that, look, if you don't like Yasuke, you don't need to play as him. It's a very bizarre marketing tactic, all things considered, if you ask me. Why would they make a playable character be someone who is not an assassin to begin with, can't climb well anything pretty much, and do the things your franchise are known for? It's just really weird to me. It would be like a Splinter Cell game where you can play as Sam Fisher and then there's just some other new hero who is all about guns blazing and they can't stealth themselves. At that point, why even spend the dev time implementing someone in a franchise known for stealth that can't do the thing your game is known for? It's so weird, man. I think it's plenty obvious why they included Yasuke, which is simply for those DEI points. There's really no other explanation that makes any sort of sense. Ubisoft has in the past tried to circumvent this and say that they wanted Yasuke so the player has a fish out of water, or someone who isn't necessarily in tune with the customs of Japan as their viewpoint into that world. Yet every single other Assassin's Creed game, this has never been the case. In 2, you play as Ezio, an Italian guy in Italy, obviously. You play as Bayek in Origins, an Egyptian guy in Egypt. This has never been the case ever in this series that we needed to play someone unfamiliar with the land that they're in. I guess the closest we had to this would be Ezio in Constantinople in Revelations, but it also doesn't really work per se, because by the time Revelations came out, we all knew who Ezio was and his whole story. So moving him to another city, which still kinda adhered to some of the customs at least and whatnot that Ezio was familiar with, that still worked for that game. It just kinda sounds like cope to me is all. They've changed the messaging on Yasuke so much throughout this game's press, that if you ask me, I don't really believe any reason that Ubisoft tries to come up with how to mitigate this. They just wanted to put a black guy in Japan, that's it. I guess the only other time I can think of where they made a foreigner work in a foreign land is probably Valhalla, since you are a Viking in England. But that works because the historical context made sense because Vikings obviously raided and settled in England proper during that time. This is just copium, but then again, this is the same publisher that tried to push the message that players should become more comfortable with not actually owning their games, so I guess Ubisoft executives should become equally as comfortable no longer working at Ubisoft if they're just gonna push stupid stuff like this. But Ubisoft has confirmed that they are, according to their CEO, doing well at their new cost reduction plan, which, by the way, part of that plan was just letting go hundreds of employees to cut those costs down. Very cool, Ubisoft. Very cool. Just throwing people's jobs away, but of course the executives get to stay with their golden parachutes. So yeah, just keep the problems who keep making new problems for you, but throw away the devs who actually make the product. Video games, ladies and gentlemen, you gotta love it. Here's the last part of the Shadows thing for this video. So you may remember that clip of a player showing that Yasuke can desecrate shrines in Shadows, which is a big no-no for obvious reasons. Anyway, Grum spoke to people tied to this, and here's what he said. My local source confirms the Itate Hyozu Jinjig Shrine in Japan has filed a formal request to Ubisoft, asking them to remove the entire religious site from Assassin's Creed Shadows. My source tells me the temple's leaders are very upset at the use of their shrine and the ability to destroy the interior. The temple joins a long list of Japan gaffes that have plagued the game, such as the unauthorized use of the Sekigahara Rifle Corps banner in the art book concept art. Shadows loudly touted the sensitivity and research that went into the game, hiring several, shall we say, questionable historians to consult on the title. It has been an unmitigated disaster so far, and Japan is not happy. So, the shrine that was destroyed in that viral clip, the people who run that shrine in real life just want it removed from the game because they found it deeply offensive to their culture. Will Ubisoft respond? I guess we'll see, but I figured I'd let you guys know. Now let's talk about this other weird dumpster fire of a game called Avowed. The game has come out to, I would say, fine reviews. You have some 9s, some 8s, and then there's some bad reviews too. Overall, right now, it's sitting at an 80 on Metacritic, which is still good. Then there's other YouTubers like Luke Stevens, who I recently found out blocked me on Twitter, which is not very nice of him, but that's okay. And he has said in his video that Avowed is a mess and it runs like dog water. Maddie Plays also said the game is just not what people are looking for from Obsidian Entertainment. None of this is surprising if you take but one look at the game and see how different it looks from its initial reveal trailer. Like, here's the teaser trailer for Avowed. It looks dark and sinister, very serious, and it gives off this ancient medieval fantasy tone to it all. Then you look at the actual Avowed, and it looks like someone spilled a bunch of paint over everything and covered it with mushrooms for some reason. This game, apparently, it has a very unhealthy fascination with mushrooms and covers your character in them because they're god-touched. Which just means that you look like a clicker from The Last of Us, I guess, which, if you ask me, is just stupid, and then they should have just found literally any other way to depict this god-touch status. Like, maybe give your character horns, or a halo, or just anything but this. Instead, your entire character is just mushrooms. It looks like garbage. I really don't see how you can defend this from a design standpoint at all. Thankfully, you can hide these ugly mushrooms from your face by just going into the settings and changing it, but characters will still just act like you are god-touched anyway. So if you do end up playing it, probably a good idea to just do that so you don't look like an overgrowth of fungus. But the overall consensus on Avowed is that it's a technical mess of a game that is full of jank. It has bugs aplenty and can also easily corrupt your save files, and entire quest lines just flat out do not work or can be completed. This is yet another ding on the Xbox brand as they continue to release these subpar products to players, but frankly at this point, none of it really surprises me anymore. I genuinely do think that the Game Pass model has ruined Xbox completely. And I don't just mean the fact that the console just sold like dog water too. Did you know that Microsoft only sold 2 million Xbox Series X or S's combined, I guess, in 2024 globally? No, I'm not kidding you, that's real. This is historically bad for your premier console that you are pushing for your ecosystem. In comparison, PlayStation 5, they sold 9.5 million units from October to December 2024 alone. Yeah, that's real too, by the way. In total, PS5 sales are just over 75 million globally right now. It's really no wonder why Xbox is releasing their games now on PS5 going forward. Whether people want to act like a console war is still a thing, it really isn't. Xbox is no longer a viable brand for gaming. If you primarily play there, I honestly think you're crazy, and you should just pack it up and either go full-time on PS5 or at least PC. The only platforms for games that really matter now are PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC. That's it. Just accept it, man. Xbox is dead. 2 million consoles in 1 year. Jesus, man, they are cooked. And when it comes to Avowed, this doesn't surprise me that the game has been getting torn apart like a roast chicken by a group of hungry fat kids. Microsoft has doomed their entire platform with Game Pass because quality no longer matters when it comes to shilling their products. It's like Netflix or any other streaming service, there's no reason to make actual quality products, because people don't pay individually for each game anyways on Xbox anymore. They just go get Game Pass, which has also stopped growing at a healthy rate as well. So these games just kind of come out with the sole intention of wasting your time for no other reason than to make sure that the games you play just last long enough so that your subscription renews for another month. Avowed, I guarantee you, dude, it would have been way better had it not been primarily made for something like Game Pass. If they knew, and I mean Obsidian, that their studio could go under and the sales of the game actually mattered, Avowed would not have been released the way that it is right now. Microsoft has created such a lazy culture of game development that doesn't prioritize quality nor players' time anymore when it comes to their so-called first-party releases. Outside of their Forza games, everything else has just diminished in quality for Xbox year over year now. It's pathetic to see such a great platform be reduced to the ashes it is now, and I'm so glad that I walked away from Xbox over 10 years ago. And it's very obvious that I made the right decision. Just looking at Avowed, it makes my head hurt. Everything just looks like an LSD trip 24/7. It's just mushrooms, aplenty, everywhere. Lots of green and like purple colors. And it kind of just looks like when you're watching a TV show and you see like a kid in the background playing something while their parents are talking? In like a sitcom, I mean. And the game doesn't look real. That's basically what Avowed looks like to me. But in this case it is, but let's be serious, man, why the hell would they move away from that far more captivating dark fantasy outlook they had in that initial teaser trailer for the game? That is beyond me. This just looks like Fisher-Price. Like the Rugrats theme should be playing the entire time you engage with it. Maybe the game could be fun once the game is, actually fixed and doesn't run like ass or corrupts your save files. And I bet that this will inevitably one day come to PlayStation as well too. But this is one of those games that if you really want to play it, frankly, you should just wait like a full year, if not more, before you even play it yourself. Because it's unfortunately yet another game in a long list of releases from Xbox where it just doesn't work properly or functions at all. In a year's time, I'm sure these problems will mostly be fixed, and whenever it comes to PlayStation, I would just encourage people to just wait for like a deep sale before jumping into this one. Apparently you can also choose your pronouns in this game, but nobody ever refers to you by those pronouns regardless in-game. They just call you the envoy anyway, so picking your pronouns it's just there for like performative reasons, I guess. Microsoft probably just wanted Avowed to have pronouns so they could put it on some spreadsheet so they could show some out-of-touch executive that, look, there's pronouns in our game, and then their ESG points go up, I guess. Also, early player previews have noticed that a mass majority of characters in the game are black for some reason, which I mean, okay, I guess, but why are people even surprised by this? The art director guy on Avowed has already made it abundantly clear that he wants to replace all white men, including himself, with diverse people in gaming. And I mean, just look at these other designs, man. We got weird, scaly they-thems with yee-ass haircuts in Avowed. We even got what I can only assume is trans dwarves or whatever the hell this is in Avowed as well. Like, look at those shoulders on that dwarf and the jawline and those feet. What is going on here, man? Microsoft, my god, dude. Avowed just kind of looks like the epitome of the Slop Simulator 2025 Edition Bonanza pre-order for Extra Pronouns Edition game. Nothing about this looks appealing. I already forgot what the footage of this game looked like a minute ago in this very video, because it just all looks the same. I should just play the same gameplay segment over and over again, and you guys probably couldn't even notice either. Of course, yes, I'm using B-roll footage here, because I'm not playing this anytime soon. What are you, nuts? I'm not buying an Xbox to play it. But this unironically looks like someone shoved art supplies up their rectum, and then they ate a farmer's wrap from Tim Hortons, and then just shat out their masterpiece onto a blank canvas. This is a game made for the modern audience. Again, Obsidian won't be tanked because Microsoft owns them, and to keep them operated in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really cost Microsoft that much at all. But if you ever needed to see a more by the numbers, we don't really care game, it's Avowed, man. And the fact that it runs like ass and looks this bad and the game is touted as being a smaller scale experience compared to, say, Skyrim or other comparisons, that's insane to me, dude. What are we doing? You guys really made a smaller Skyrim that looks worse and is filled with whatever the hell these things are, and you still couldn't compete with it. I mean, Skyrim came out 14 years ago. What are we doing here? It's like Western gaming development has regressed or something. Like, these people are unlearning what made the games they played great in the past. The fact that someone at Microsoft saw Avowed in action and went, oh hell yeah, release this, they're gonna love it. That person needs to be placed in a cannon and then shot into the deep ocean for their transgressions. And if they survive the swim back, maybe we can talk about forgiveness. To be honest with you guys, I don't know what else I can say about this game. Everyone involved with Avowed, they should be lobotomized for taking a part in making this game what it is. I'll give it a little bit here, okay? The combat, at least, it looks fine at best. But for a 2025 game backed by $1 billion, or is it $1 trillion corporation, whatever Microsoft is, this is the best you guys could come up with? Look, I have no faith in Obsidian anymore already. It's very clear that the people who made New Vegas over there, they have left that studio a long time ago. This is just yet another legacy studio that is filled with activists using the name of better devs to push their product. I got nothing more to say for now unless something stupid happens with Avowed. This is just going to go down as like one of the games of all time. The kind of game where people were paid to make things. There was art that was made for it, I guess. And at times, you even press buttons to do things in the game. Avowed is truly a game that was made by people who just don't understand what players want these days, man. Thank God there's plenty to play out here right now that's actually good, man. Pirate Yakuza? That can't come soon enough, man. That's all I'm saying. Well, that's enough for now. Between Ass Creed and Avowed, I don't know what to tell you guys. Is there something in the water? Are the frogs truly being turned gay? Are we just regressing as a species altogether? Because why are these things being made in the year of our Lord 2025 and beyond? Avowed is just offensive to my eyes. The more I look at it, my god, I'm done. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to and all of that. I'm out. It legit looks like someone threw up the remains of like Rage 2 and Far Cry New Dawn all over the screen. See you when I see you.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.